that version of you, right, that persona that you create is going to be how people view you moving forward. You're creating this thing that is like a placeholder for you in certain situations. Welcome back to the Diaries of a Witch podcast. My name is Angelica Crashi, and today we're going to be talking about Persona Magick. This is one of my favorite magical topics. I am so excited, honestly, to talk about this today. I was actually going to film a totally different episode and video, but I was like, you know what? This is something that I've been thinking about a lot. It's something that I am preparing a longer module for in Glamour Magic Mastery. It's a type of magic that I've been using a lot myself, and this is Diaries of a Witch, where I tell you about what's going on in my magical practice, as well as sharing tips and teaching and that sort of thing. And I feel like the last couple episodes have been very we did do the Glamour Magic Q&A, but we did Lupercalia, we did Antisteria. It was a lot of me telling and teaching and talking about these ancient holidays. So today I am just doing kind of a chatty video where I just wanted to talk about how I use Persona Magick, what it is, and why I think it is one of the more fun and super useful things to do in Glamour Magic. It's sort of, I would say, falls under the category of Glamour Magic, or it's something that you can do with your Glamour Magic. Persona Magick is when you create a magical version of yourself, a magical persona that you take on. This is similar in a way to creating a servitor or some other magical entity that you birth and you create, right? Different traditions, different types of magic and magic systems have different ways of understanding the creation of a magical entity or a spirit. And I would say to some extent, we do this all the time in witchcraft on a smaller scale. We, raise energy and then expel that energy out. And sometimes we're doing that into a bag or a jar or a protective talisman or some type of smaller entity consciousness that we are creating. And when you're creating a servitor, you are actually seeing the thing that you're creating as sort of a being with its own, personality, its own character design, etc. So Persona Magick is when you do that, the intention is that that version of you, right, that persona that you create is going to be how people or the general world or a certain group of people view you moving forward. You're creating this thing that is like a placeholder for you in certain situations. There's also other ways that a magical persona can affect you, or, different things that you can use a magical persona for. It can also be used to help you step into a part of you or a version of yourself that you want to be more like. It can help you self-transform and change kind of your perspective on who you are. A really good example of this is magical mottos. You may or may not be familiar with this term. Essentially, a magical motto is a name that you take on. Typically, or usually, you would do this if you were initiating into a tradition or a coven or a set magical group or something. Lots of traditions utilize the idea of having a magical motto, and a lot of the times if you're initiated into multiple traditions, you're often choosing a different magical motto for each initiation experience. The whole idea of the magical motto is that the name is prophetic in some way. It helps you transform. It helps you step into something. You basically give yourself a magical name, and the idea is that you start to become what that name suggests. quotes. A lot of people will choose like a quote that they really like or some type of aphorism that they really resonate with. A lot of the times people will choose magical mottos in different languages, or cultivate like a phrase or a word that they really want to embody, but then they'll translate it into another language. The idea with that is sort of so that you can detach from the word in maybe the language that you know the best, and you can still use it and connect metaphysically with that word and with what it embodies, but you're not as familiar with that word in the other language, so you're able to almost like take it on as yours much more readily. Another reason why you might want to translate it into another language for a magical motto is because certain languages are considered magical. This is something that's popular, I would say, especially in ceremonial magic. The idea of certain languages having certain frequencies, or using certain languages in certain contexts, using different divine names in specific languages in different contexts. I'm Italian American, and every magical motto I've ever had, it's changed a little bit over the years. I've given myself them, and then I've been like, actually, I don't really want to do that one anymore. I'm gonna get a different one. But they're always in Latin because I resonate with that language sort of ancestrally, and I just think the language is really cool, and I like to say my magical motto in Latin out loud because it just sounds really cool. So I've chosen personally to have a Latin magical motto, but some people will choose other languages, and some people choose the language that they speak, right? You don't necessarily have to translate it into another language for the motto to work. If you give yourself this name, if you say, this is my name now, this is who I am, this is my prophecy, this is what I will become, you are taking that on. That is something that you are becoming. So the idea of persona magic doesn't just have to be, okay, I'm creating this entity, this servitor, this creature. Creature sounds really weird. It can also be used for personal transformation, for self-transformation, to step into a version of yourself that you want to try to embody. And the thing with magical mottos, and all of Persona Magick, honestly, is you have to be a little bit careful about exactly what type of language that you're using or what words you choose, because that thing, like any spell, can manifest in a potentially unpredictable way. So I remember when I was getting my bachelor's degree in writing, I had like a poetry concentration. I did my thesis in poetry. I wrote a poetry book for my thesis. My poetry teacher and my advisor would always tell me, go over every single word in your poem and make sure that that's the right word. That's the word that wants to be there. That's the word that makes the most sense. Comb through all your work and make sure, like, spiritually, all of the words are correct in those, in the order, and that's the perfect word to embody what it is that you're trying to say. And this advice has been so profound for me in my magical practice as well, not just my writing and my poetry, but we have to keep in mind as witches to do a similar thing. You don't have to go through every single syllable and be like, is this gonna work? Is this something that I want? But really taking a while to come to the idea of what your magical motto is going to be. How could this prophecy develop? How could I become that thing and step into that thing? What does that path look like? You can even think about the path that you're on right now, either spiritually or, in a variety of areas of your life. I would say think about the general direction that you want to go in life. Think about words and keywords and feelings and things that you want to embody in that next phase of your life, and then creating a name or finding some sort of phrase or aphorism that encapsulates that and using that as your magical motto. The reason why it's called a magical motto is because it is oftentimes a longer sentence or a phrase. The term magical motto and magical names are often used synonymous with each other. Magical names tend to be kind of like a first name, last name situation. and a magical motto tends to be more of a phrase. However, I think that they can be used interchangeably. I've seen them being used interchangeably. I would say the mottos are a little bit more common in ceremonial magic tradition. You can look up like the list of Crowley's magical mottos and William Butler Yeats and like everybody else that was in, and a lot of other people who are in magical traditions that utilize magical mottos. And then I would say, generally speaking, in witchcraft, you see a little bit more of like the first name, last name type of a magical name. And whenever you take on a magical motto or a magical name, it tends to be a ritual of initiation of some kind. I've never been in a magical tradition. I'm not initiated into a magical tradition. However, I've had, different magical names over the years, and I've held self-initiation, or I think you could just call them like transformation rituals, honestly, where I am specifically holding a ritual to give myself this magical name, to connect with it, to embody it, to tell my gods that this is my name. That's sort of how you would create this magical motto of yours, is you would create some type of ritual. And you can do it really similarly to how you would release any intention into the world. You can write it on a piece of paper and burn that piece of paper. You can write a petition where you are stating that this is your magical motto and your name. There are so many ways that you can work with this energy and, claim this magical motto. And I would also recommend, if you are going to be holding a ritual around this, you are stepping into a new version of yourself, right? So giving yourself like a reading as you enter this new area and this new path in your life, as you open up these roads for yourself, and you give yourself, this prophecy of like who you want to become, do a reading for yourself in this ritual. Dress like the person that you want to embody and become. I did back in the fall, in Patreon, I posted a Glamour Magic costuming ritual. So you could always literally like go back in the Patreon and do that ritual and wear clothing that really embodies who you want to become in this new path and in this new journey of your life. And you could add that layer to the ritual as well, where you're stating your magical motto, but you're also doing a Glamour Magic persona ritual. And I find this to be helpful for those of you who have many names, or like a person of many names. Because sometimes as like somebody who is married, and I have a maiden name, I have my married name, I have pen names that I write under and do work under, and I sometimes never really know like what name to actually use in a lot of my rituals or my petitions. Like when you're signing your name, I'm like, who am I? I have Mercury on the ascendant. A lot of people who have Mercury on the angles, especially the ascendant, will have this problem of like they have many names and they're known by different things to different people. So it's kind of funny, actually. But the magical motto really solved that for me, because now every single time I write a petition, I sign, a spell, I inscribe my name into a candle, I'm using my magical motto, because that is the name that I've given myself. That is who I am on a metaphysical level. That is my name. And it's also really helpful not to talk about your magical motto, or to, use it a lot. I mean, some people do, and honestly, you guys know me. I'm not somebody to tell you that you can or cannot do something. I don't like to tell people what to do. A lot of people use their magical mottos as their usernames. A lot of people use them in other ways, right? So I'm not gonna tell you that you can't use it, but I think the benefit to concealing your magical name is that if somebody is trying to do some type of baneful magic against you and they don't know your magical motto, then it is not going to be as effective as somebody who does, right? So if you're cursing, a name, if you're doing a hex or a curse or something on a name, but that's not how you show up magically, then you're essentially giving yourself a layer of protection against that type of thing. So it's also such a great ward that you can give yourself. Let's talk about the other type of persona magic that I wanted to cover in this episode, which is what I brought up first, which is like when you create a character or a version of you. And I said it's kind of similar to a servitor. You could approach this, especially if you're a chaos witch. Hello to all my chaos practitioners out there. What's up? You could approach it like a servitor, and you could create a sigil. You could create a ritual where you're kind of like birthing this character into the world. A lot of chaos magicians like to use sex magic or bodily fluids or another type of like life force giving ritual in order to create the servitor and bring the servitor into existence. And by the way, a servitor is like an entity that you create. They're sort of an extension of you. You typically give them a name, a purpose, what they're meant to do, like why you're creating them. And typically servitors have very specific purposes of like, you're going to protect me. You're going to protect my car. You're going to help me go out and do this thing. You're going to help me, manifest more money into my life or something, right? You're going to guard my finances so that nobody can, steal from me. Those are some of the things that you would task a servitor with. And when you're creating a servitor, you're telling them very specifically like, hey, this is why I'm creating you. And so it's an extension of you, but servitors tend to have their own character design. You can get really creative. You can kind of go a little like D&D on it and be like, okay, what do they look like? What do they wear? How do they interact with me? What is their personality? These are some of the things that you can program a servitor with. It's a really, really fun magical exercise, and it comes from chaos magic. And I love servitors. I think servitors are so fun. And Persona Magick is similar in the sense of I am creating a character. I am birthing this character into existence. And they are still an extension of me. And people are going to see them as me. People are going to perceive this entity essentially that I've created, this persona. They're going to see that and be like, oh yeah, that's Angelica in this context. So you could create different personas for different things that you want to do, or for different purposes. Like let's say you really want to start to like climb the career ladder in your field or whatever. You could think like, okay, who is the version of me that would do that? What do they wear? What do they say? How are they perceived by others? Similar questions that you would ask yourself when you're doing like any type of glamour magic ritual around shifting your perception. And you can create this whole character, this whole version of yourself, this magical extension of yourself. And the benefit of doing this over just like a glamour magic enchantment or like a, kind of perceptive veil that you're putting over yourself is that this character, this persona, exists separately from you magically. I mean, you can create a small altar for them. You can give them offerings. You can pull tarot cards from them. You can get advice from them. You can talk to them about what they want and what they need. You can do spell work in conjunction with this character that you've created, with this persona. And it can just be such a powerful way to create success. So I hope it makes sense as to why you would want to create a character like this and why it would be helpful. There is a little bit of upkeep that comes along with creating any type of servitor-like entity, right? You have to, I think especially a persona, this is an extension of you. A servitor can just kind of be existing and doing their job, and as long as you've like programmed them with what the job is, they might not need to talk to you very often about what it is that they're doing. You might not really interact very much with your servitor, whereas with your persona, you're probably going to interact with this person a lot. And it might feel even a little like jarring at first to create a persona and have this as a separate magical entity that sort of exists alongside of you. I think that it is something that I would definitely classify as an advanced magical endeavor. It's fun, and like I think that if you're interested in this, you should definitely try it out. If it sounds intriguing, give it a try. It's like really, really fun. However, I would definitely recommend thinking really hard about like why you would want to create this persona, what exactly they're doing. And I always, anytime I create a magical being or a servitor or any type of like magical object or something, I always like to come up with, how I'm going to deprogram this thing or how I'm going to call this thing back into me. When you're doing a ritual, when you're evoking a deity, the advice typically at the end of the ritual is to give them the license to depart, which is to tell them, hey, you can go now. Like, you're not bound by this ritual anymore. See you later. Have fun. Go back to where you came from. And it's helpful to program your servitors or your personas with a similar energy of like, this is where you live. This is where you go when I don't need you anymore. This is where you go when, you're not working and doing magic and doing things for me. And knowing how to call them into that space, programming them with that. When I'm creating a magical persona, I typically am creating a character version of myself, like a exaggerated version of myself for one specific goal. For example, I have a social media magical persona. I'm sure it's not a shock to any of you to hear such a thing. My magical persona online is both on a mundane sense, like my personal brand, and then also in a magical sense, it is a entity that I have created, right? So the version of me that you see, this is me, right? Like, this is like my body, this is who I am, right? But the version of me that you are seeing, what I cultivate, what I put out there for you to see, is done in a way to evoke my magical persona. Angelica IRL shows up a little bit differently than Angelica online. And that is intentional for a couple different reasons. I wanted to be able to create a magical persona that could help me grow my presence on social media and Instagram in particular, right? I really wanted to achieve success, and I was like, well, I'm a witch, I'm a glamour witch, I'm a chaos witch. I'm gonna do an experiment. I'm gonna do a magical persona for social media. And it, goes in alignment with my personal brand. It kind of works with my personal brand. And that's what I did. I've also done this for privacy and protection reasons. And then I also just think that having like a persona, having a personal brand, a character that, has very specific things that they do, things that they wear, colors that they use, has a whole personality and vibe and mood of their own. That is something that has really helped me be cohesive online. And I think that that's really helped me like grow and expand my social presence, especially over on Instagram, which has been the platform that I've been like focusing on growing for the last couple years or so. Podcast and YouTube are newer in the scope of things, but I've been, growing my Instagram probably like really seriously for about 3.5, 4 years or so. And the thing that I love about having this social media magical persona is that social media happens 24/7, right? People see my stuff 24/7. It's not just when I'm awake. It's not just when I'm posting. It is something that is constantly being seen and being viewed by people, right? And so I like the idea of having this magical persona that is separate from me, that is like its own thing, its own entity, if you will, that can interact with and be kind of like online 24/7, like that magical persona. She is online, she is engaging, she is drawing in, magnetizing. She is doing the work for me when I'm sleeping, grocery shopping, cooking, doing things that I, myself, right? Mundane Angelica, if you will. The things that I have to do, the things that I like doing. I'm working on projects behind the scenes. I'm replying to emails. I'm filming a podcast, I'm editing and doing all like the not fun parts about being a content creator and a social media person and whatever. And my magical persona gets to be in full glam all the time on the internet, grabbing people's attention or whatever. So I love this type of magic. Obviously, it's been really successful for me, and so I love it because of that. Partially, but it's also just really fun, and it's just exciting to create a persona and a character. So what I like to do whenever I'm creating like a magical persona is I create like a Pinterest board or a collage board or some type of like vision board for this person. And I like to think of them as a character. Who am I going to draw from? I think having like icons that you're looking up to or aesthetics that you want to use intentionally is a really great way to bring in something that people already know and are familiar with into your character and persona, right? I mean, you can create something totally innovative and different and like totally out of the box, but I think, especially when we're talking about like magnetizing things to us, I find it to be really helpful to use aesthetics and motifs and moods that either evoke some type of specific nostalgia, or maybe the aesthetic embodies something about your character. It almost like conveys a personality trait or something that the viewer or whoever interacts with this persona will easily be able to pick up about your character visually. So for example, when I am showing up online, I really like to wear the cat eye. I really like 1960s kind of eye makeup looks. And that is intentional, partially just because I think it looks good on me. I like this type of makeup. It's genuinely the makeup that I enjoy wearing the most. But I'm also trying to evoke like the Love Witch aesthetic. The Love Witch aesthetic, I want to do a whole different podcast episode or video about the Love Witch aesthetic because the origins of it are so interesting to me. But there were the short version is there were these like paperback books in the 1960s and 70s that were really popular in America and in the UK. And these paperback books, they were witchcraft books. They were books, written by practitioners. And oftentimes the covers would look like a pulp fiction novel or something, but it would be the image of, a witch in trendy 1960s or 70s clothing with a big cauldron or something. And so that is where the Love Witch imagery comes from, is these old paperbacks of like a beautiful woman with a 1960s cat eye wearing like a black trench coat hunched over a cauldron. It comes from these paperbacks that were just like super popular for some reason. That's what I'm trying to evoke aesthetically in a way, right? So it's calling upon something that you might have seen, something that, films like The Love Witch are also calling upon. It's drawing from something that feels familiar to you, something that you maybe like the aesthetic of. And that's an intentional decision. And again, part of it is just because I like it and I think it's cool and I think it looks good and I'm interested in all this stuff. And then part of it is, you're probably also interested in this. So if I dress that way or if I do my makeup that way, you might be more likely to like actually want to follow me or watch my shit or listen to my podcast because you're like, oh, I really enjoy what it is that she's doing over here, And this is something that I've intentionally cultivated, partially through like a personal branding marketing standpoint, but metaphysically as well. And the metaphysical side of it has just been so fun. Something that I do all the time with my magical persona is I ask her, like, what do you want to talk about? Or what do you want to do? My problem is I have literally so many ideas. I could talk for an hour and a half about the most random stuff. The most random thing. And it's hard being a content creator with that in particular because I am like, I just want to talk about this random, very specific occult thing that I'm obsessed with right now. But I know that some of you would probably enjoy it, but maybe not all of you, And I have topics that I like to cover. Like I like to talk about glamour magic. Hades obviously is really important to me. I would say those are like my primary things I like to talk about. I love talking about astrology, ancient astrology, et cetera, right? And so I try not to get too crazy and just talk about a bunch of random stuff because I don't want to be that mutable. I want it to be a little like contained. And so sometimes I will ask my magical social media persona, like, hey, what do you want to do a reel about? What do you want to do a video about? Like, what are we gonna do? Like, I have all these ideas and I know I can't do them all, and I know not all of them fit with, you know, what your vibe is. So what do you want to do? And I will do like an automatic writing session where I'm connecting to this version of myself, this persona, or I'll pull some tarot cards from her. I have like a little altar set up associated with this version of me, and so I'll go over to the altar, light an altar candle for her, and ask her these questions. And it is so helpful when I am trying to figure out how to move forward, or trying to get ideas or narrow things down, to actually be able to talk to like an entity about this that has their own ideas and their own feelings about what it is that they want to put out into the world. If you want to learn more about this topic, if you want to create your own magical personas this spring, join Glamour Magick Mastery, my advanced Glamour Magick practicum. We're going to be covering so many different types of advanced Glamour Magick, including Persona Magick. This program begins on March 6th, and since February is a short month, that is next week, if you are watching this when it comes out, if you're listening when this comes out. So join us now. We already have 25 witches who are in on this program and who have already registered. So join them and let's do some advanced Glamour Magick this spring. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and comment. If you are listening on a podcast platform, this is a weekly show that comes out every week. So follow or subscribe to this show and come back every Wednesday for new episodes. And I also have a Patreon where you can get access to a ton of exclusive content and live events. So join my Patreon if you want to support me and the show even further. And speaking of my patrons, I wanted to give a shout out to my Diary and Coven tier members. Thank you so much, Jamie, Cheryl, Emma, Alexis, Alessandra, Ashley, Luna, Taylor, Jordan, Chelsea, Quinn, Floor, Megan A, Megan M, Melissa, Natalie, Jen, Carrie, Lauren, Kayla, Alethea, Lindsay, Sarah, Quinn, Peony, Joanna, Megan S, Megan R, Callie, Nina, Irene, Chelb, Haley, Kristen, Desiree, BFG, Emmy, Hannah, Georgia, Adri, Liz, Kay, Esty, Kristen, Shell, Veronica, Isabella, Lanes, Junie, Elena, Jojo, Teddy, Paige, Shania, Stellar Steph, Crystal, Mina, Kimberly, and my newest member, Finian. Thank you so much for being patrons. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We will talk very soon. Goodbye, everyone. And here's Nero just in time to wish us all goodbye. Bye.